Hi, everyone. It's a scene we've probably all experienced in one way or another. A parent storms towards the bottom of the staircase in the house and yells upstairs, "How many times do I have to tell you people not to yell in the house?" And in that moment, every child learns something very important. Not about calmness, about contradiction. One of the great frustrations in life, it seems, is that the people closest to us often don't become what we tell them to become, but they very often become what they live right next to. Parents discover this in regard to their children, rebbes, moras, and teachers discover this with their students, and spouses discover this in their beloved mates. The fact is that human beings absorb atmosphere more deeply than instruction. And nowhere do we find this message more clearly spelled out than in this week's Haftorah. You see, the Haftorah focuses on the prelude to the birth of the Shofet Shimshon HaGibor. Shimshon was born at a period of time that Chazal identify with a generation where the people were judging the judges, ostensibly a time where the leadership was tough for the people to accept, especially when they were being swayed by sin. Try as they may to break free from the pattern of sin, the book of Shoftim identifies a cycle that kept bringing the people back to sin and the punishment of indentured servitude to an enemy, in the period of our Haftorah, specifically the Plishtim. You see, our Haftorah begins with the story of a man, Manoach, from the Shevet of Dan, who along with his wife suffered from infertility. The Medrash adds that the couple also suffered from the marital blame of one another as to the source of the infertility, as if that would help things, with each of the spouses blaming each other. Ultimately, a malach, an angel, appears to Hatzalfunes, Manoach's wife, telling her that indeed the infertility was her fault, but not to worry, because she was going to have a baby who would be a Nazir from birth, who would save the Jews from the Plishtim. The malach gives her specific instructions as to how to raise the child and what to do with him, what not to do with him, what to allow him to do and what not. It was all pretty spelled out there. And if that was the only goal of the Haftorah, it should and could have been a lot shorter, ending right there. But it doesn't. Instead, we read about how Atzlalfunish tells Manoach about the Malach and the instructions. Manoach then davens to Hashem for a revisit from the Malach in order to know how to raise the child, as if his wife's words weren't enough. And to make the Haftorah even more incredible, Hashem responds to Manoach positively and resends the Malach again to his wife, who needs to run after Manoach to get him to come back and speak to the Malach. Well, Manoach, after this entire episode, asks what he needs to know and do for the child, and he's given a pretty short answer. Mikol asher amarti el hoyishat tishamer. Whatever I told the woman, your wife, that's what you should do. That's right. We have 11 extra psukim in the Haftorah simply to highlight that whatever Manoach's wife heard, that's what Manoach was supposed to do. Now, why did Hashem grant this request for another audience with the Malach if he was simply going to repeat the same message? Couldn't he learn it from his wife? Or did he not trust her? And finally, and perhaps the most difficult, what new information did the Malach actually provide for the second time? The late great Rav Shimon Schwab offered a profound insight. He notes that Manoach wasn't asking for information, he was asking for guidance. Manoach understood that he was being asked to raise a child with standards that he himself didn't live by. How, he was essentially asking, can I raise a child to live like a Nazir while I myself drink wine? How can I effectively raise my son towards a spiritual level that I myself do not observe? And to that the Malach responded, Tishamer, you should observe it. You see, according to Rav Schwab, the Malach was telling Manoach, you're correct. If you want to raise a child towards holiness, you yourself must be a part and become a part of the message, not merely the teacher of it. You need to be the embodiment of it, because values aren't transmitted primarily through speeches. They're transmitted through example. And maybe that's what Chazal mean when they tell us Maaseh avos siman lebanim. It's the actions of our avos and imahos that serve as a sign for us, as their descendants. It doesn't say divrei avos, the words of the forefathers are the sign, but rather the actions, the masa. For as the late Lubavitcher Rebbe once noted, the siman lebanim, refers to inspiration, and we derive inspiration best by looking at the actions of those who came before us. The way that they carried themselves is a powerful example to us as to what we might try for ourselves as well. And if it's true for us and the inspiration we derive from our progenitors, then it's likely to be true for our children learning from us too. Don't you agree? Modern psychology has rediscovered what the Torah already understood centuries ago. Human beings learn primarily through modeling. Children imitate tone, families imitate regulation, communities imitate leadership. What becomes normalized eventually becomes internalized. My Rebbe and friend, Rav Yaakov Yankee Horowitz, is fond of quoting a comment of the late Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, based on a comment of the great Amora Reish Lakish, who noted that kshot atzmacha v'achar kach kshot acherim, that you should correct yourself before you correct other people. Usually we understand this to mean, don't be hypocritical. In fact, this was one of the claims of the generation of the Shoftim, who regularly told the leadership that they should tul korah mi beinei necha, take the beams out of their eyes before they go ahead and criticize the people. In other words, in response to criticism, the people got defensive. And this became the general atmosphere of the time. But Rav Hirsch says something deeper. The first use of the word kishot comes from the Aramaic word kushta, of truth. And based on that, Rav Hirsch explained that Reish Lakish was calling on each of us to become truthful with ourselves before addressing others. Live honestly before preaching honesty. Become disciplined before demanding discipline. Become calm before demanding calmness. Become trustworthy before demanding trust. Because people instinctively know when words emerge from lived authenticity and when they emerge merely from frustration. And maybe that was the message that Hashem wanted Manoach to get from the entire episode. In the same way he was told how he could be a good influence on his child's holiness through being a good example in his Nazirus, he was also told to cultivate a spiritual home as well. And by actively listening to his spouse, Mikol Asher Amarti Elo Ishati Shamer, going to go ahead and listen to that which she said, then Manoach's example would be a good one for his own home. You see, in struggling marriages, often we hear sentences like, why don't you trust me? And why are you always defensive? But the deeper question may be, what emotional atmosphere has been created around honesty, vulnerability, and trust? A person may desperately want openness from a spouse, but if vulnerability is consistently met with criticism and interruption and dismissal or escalation, then the relationship silently learns that openness is unsafe. You can't effectively raise someone towards a reality that your own behavior continuously contradicts. And this applies far beyond parenting and marriage. Rebbeim and teachers, Rosh Yeshiva and community leaders, even the executives of major companies, all know that the businesses, the yeshivos and communities rarely rise above what leadership normalizes. If cynicism becomes normalized, cynicism spreads. If anger becomes normalized, anger spreads. If shortcuts become normalized, shortcuts spread. But when sincerity is normalized, when humility is normalized, when menschlichkeit is normalized, those things spread too. And perhaps we can ask ourselves, what is it that you're looking for in your life right now? Is it patience? Is it respect? Is it calmness, trust, or honesty? We can then automatically ask a harder question. How visibly am I practicing that trait myself? Not perfectly. No one's perfect. But are we sincerely engaged in becoming what we're asking others to become as well? Perhaps the most powerful form of chinuch is not the speech we give after the behavior. It's the atmosphere we create before the behavior ever happens. We spend so much time and so much of life trying to find the right words. But maybe Hashem's asking something harder from us. Not better speeches, better examples. Because the loudest voice in any home is not what we say, it's who we are. Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom to all.